Hi everyone, how is it going? I'm so sorry I haven't been able to upload over the last week, but it has been a nightmare to get anything done this last week. I'm supposed to be in the middle of a marathon, and then I suddenly got sick with a 1-on-1 fever, so that really did not help things. So here I am trying to function normally, but I did want to talk about this deck that I brewed up recently for the $15 budget challenge. Remember, the rules are typically the commander can be $1 or less, the deck can be up to $15, give or take a few cents. This one's a little interesting though. We don't actually have a price on the commander, so I have no idea how much it's going to actually be when it comes out. We have a very special commander and a interesting story for why this commander is even being talked about today. But first, let's go ahead and take a look here. This is Tamiyo Inquisitive Student, a very interesting new commander from Modern Horizons 3, a 1-mana commander with flying. Whenever she attacks, you get to investigate, which of course makes a clue token for you, and if you draw your third card in a turn, exile her and then flip her into Tamiyo the Seasoned Scholar. She is a planeswalker with a bunch of fun abilities, one of which we will be abusing hard in this deck. Her +2 says until your next turn, whenever a creature attacks you or a planeswalker you control, it gets -1, -0 until end of turn, a bit of a disincentivizing people from punching her in the face. Then she can also return an instant or sorcery from your graveyard to your hand. If it's green, add a mana of any color. Sweet ability to recur things like Rampant Growths and Beast Withins. And then her final ability, which we will be abusing the hell out of, draw cards equal to the number of cards in your library rounded up. You get an emblem with you have no maximum hand size. Now, typically, this card would take a lot to actually get going. You get to +2, making her a 4 loyalty commander, then a 6 loyalty commander, then an 8, then you get to -7. So in an ideal scenario, she's coming down turn 1, flipping turn 2, and maybe ulting turn 5 or 6, assuming nobody punches her. But we are going to be abusing the absolute hell out of this commander for $15, so don't worry, we will still be able to do some of this. Now, the funny part about this, the reason this deck has even been made in the first place, is because Evan Fong up here decided to make a post on Twitter saying, hey, MTG Twitter, I have a trade offer for you. Make an EDH deck list for my new Tamiyo. Any kind, okay, but I definitely want to build a card draw one and a token one, and I'll doodle an MTG commander or MTG character of your choice. No guarantees on quality. Now, she is actually the artist behind this Tamiyo and more of some of my favorite commanders in the game, like Ivy Gleeful Spell Thief. So I threw my hat in the ring, saying that I could build this tonight, could be an interesting commander for a $15 budget deck, and she said that that would be awesome. Feel free to use the deck list for whatever you want. So, because of that interaction, I've decided that this will be the first deck that I make as I'm coming on the mend of sickness, because I wanted to show you guys, because she just looks so fun to play now that I've built her. It takes all of the things that Simic is good at, drawing cards and slapping lands on the board, and just giving you wonderful payoff for that. So let's go ahead and get into the deck list itself. We managed to get the deck to $15.10, and let's start with the most important part, the draw package. With 14 draw cards, we have Divination to start out with. Divination does fit very well within the deck's budget, being a nice round 2-cent card, and it does draw us 2 cards. All Tamiyo cares about is that we get the second and third draws while she is on the board to see them. So we cast Divination while Tamiyo's out. It'll automatically flip her because we've already drawn 1 card during our turn. Field Research is doing the same thing. You can ignore the kicker. Distorted Curiosity is doing the same thing. Its corrupted ability can also be ignored. Mentor's Guidance is doing the same thing so long as Tamiyo's on the board, as it will let us scry 1, draw 1, then scry 1, draw 1 again, because Tamiyo is in fact a wizard. Council of the Soratomi will draw 2, and we get flavor points because of course it does feature a Moonfolk on it as well. Muldrifter also will give us access to that coveted draw 2. Brainstorm will draw us 3, and it's just budget Brainstorm for our deck as far as we're concerned. Quick Study will also draw us the 2. Everflowing Well will also draw us the 2. Also, it gives us some very interesting tech we can use later in the game to flat out win the game. And then we have some more interesting ways to get our draw. Looter Ilkor will give us a draw of 1 and then discard. It is, of course, a looter. Cold Eye Selkie gives us the ability to hit any player that has the audacity to play blue. Imagine being that player. And it will draw us a card whenever we do so. So that will help a ton and be a little dangerous for us to play around with later in the game. Just a fair warning. And then we have Inspired Sprite, a very interesting card we get to play around with. It has flash and flying, and whenever we play a wizard spell, we can untap the sprite. So here's the goal with this guy. We have the sprite on the board, and then if we have Tamiyo in the command zone, we draw a card for our turn, then we tap the sprite to draw a card and discard a card, and then when we play Tamiyo, we tap the sprite and draw discard once more, automatically putting us at the 3 cards we need, auto-transforming Tamiyo and putting us exactly where we want to be. Then we have the Whirlpool Rider, which says that whenever it comes into play, shuffle every card from your hand into your library, then draw that many cards. We can use this to either trigger Tamiyo, or if we've already ulted Tamiyo, we can use this to get a quick hand refresh of 50 cards or so that we can trigger some of our win cons that exist later in the deck. Then we have Oath of Jace. When this enters the battlefield, we draw 3 cards, triggering Tamiyo, then discard 2 cards. At the beginning of your upkeep, scry X, where X is the number of planeswalkers you control. We're basically running this just to trigger Tamiyo. But obviously, we do need to talk some upgrades that could go into this deck if you so choose, so let's get into that real quick. And the very first and obvious one we need to make is a land upgrade if you have the budget for it. You've probably got a bunch of these lying around, though, I would assume. Reliquary Tower. We do want to make sure that our hand has no maximum hand size, so this is one of the ways to make sure that happens if we cannot ult Tamiyo quite yet. Speaking of Tamiyo, we also have Tamiyo the Moon Sage. We can use this to draw a card for each tapped creature an opponent controls, which will automatically flip our main Tamiyo. Also, it's just a lovely way to have a flavor win. More Tamiyos is more fun. Then we have Mordekainen. This is basically a second copy of Tamiyo as far as I'm concerned. We can draw 2 cards of this +2, which will automatically flip Tamiyo, and we can create a blue dog token with this creature's power and toughness for each equal to twice the number of cards in your hand, so the dogs will automatically be super threatening. And then its ult is very close to Tamiyo's ult. Exchange your hand with your library, then shuffle. You get an emblem if you have no maximum hand size. If this ults, we win the game, just like with Tamiyo. So either way, you are in a happy, stable condition with this. But that dog doesn't have flying. And speaking of flying, we do need to make sure that if we are upgrading the deck with no budget, then cards like Wonder need to make their way in. We've already got ways to discard cards in the main deck. So giving all of our creatures flying will, of course, be an adequate boon. This will also help us if we start adding cards like Overbeing of Myth, which has power and toughness equal to the number of cards in our hand and gives us free draws. Chasm Skulker also will give us 1/1 counters for every single time we draw a card, and if it dies, it makes a ton of blue squids equal to that power, and then those tokens also have Island Walk. So Chasm Skulker is benefiting from Wonder by making these now flying and Island Walk squids. And then we have the Sage of Ancient Lore. With Wonder, this card is fantastic. Power and toughness equal to the number of cards in our hand. If it ETBs, draw a card, and if we ever get it to flip, it becomes a Vigilance Trampler that also has power and toughness equal to the number of cards in all players' hands. So a very, very dangerous card for us to have access to. But I'm not quite done yet. I do need to talk about one very funny combo we have access to. I did mention the Everflowing Well and how it's going to be important for a thing later. If we flip the Everflowing Well by having not 8 permanents in the graveyard, then we have the Myriad Pools. When we cast a permanent spell using mana produced by the pools, up to another target permanent becomes a copy of that spell until end of turn. So what are we doing with this? Well, the main thing we're going to be using this for is to copy our Psychosis Crawler. If we know that we are about to ult Tamiyo and somebody's got enough life that we need to just annihilate them now, or we've got enough draw power and mana to potentially do lots of damage by doubling up on Psychosis Crawler, the Everflowing Well copying Psychosis Crawler will give us just that little bit of extra power by doubling all the damage the Psychosis Crawler is doing until the end of the turn, which is an adequate payoff for letting that card flip. Otherwise, it's just a really cool looking divination that I think you should play more of in more of your decks. There's all kinds of funny things this quirky card can do. That said, that is my entire list and guide for Tamiyo, the Seasoned Scholar. This girl looks like she's going to be very, very fun, and while she's only going to be on this side, I know I flipped to the Nevin Rawls just for a second there, ignore that, just like you're going to ignore it in your games before it blows up. But she's only going to sit on this side for a very limited amount of time, and then she's going to flip over to this side very, very, very quickly. And I can't wait to see what types of brews people come up with her, because she looks like she's going to be a very fun commander. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you haven't already. And as always, everyone, insert end of video tagline here. Hey, I just quickly want to give a thank you to all of my wonderful patrons who keep this show running. YouTube and Twitch are a pretty bumpy ride at the best of times, and the stability that Patreon provides me is worth more than I can say here. I'd also like to thank each and every one of my $20 and up patrons here, and they would be Red Joker, Britzkrieg, Cameron, Dren, Jemshin, Smiling DM, Poundini, Mabbity Babbity, Naomi, Isaac, Agamotto, Jordan, Ravi, Giuni, Kiratorian, Prisma, all of you, Sagitt, I'm not saying that part, and Starlight. And finally, thank you to everyone else that helps keep this channel alive. While you're here, why not check out another video? And thank you for watching.